The year is 1665. It is a summer of suffocating heat. A strange, heavy silence has descended over the most incredible city on earth, broken only by the mournful tolling of bells and the creaking wheels of the dead carts. The air is thick, not just with the usual wood smoke and river fog, but with fear. London is a city on the edge. It is a labyrinth of timber and mud, a fragile organism teeming with life, yet currently stalked by an invisible death. The sun beats down on the narrow, uneven streets, baking the filth in the gutters, while inside the leaning houses, families hold their breath, praying that the sickness passes their door. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic paintings and maps to life, shifting perspective and moving through these scenes in ways their original artists never could. We are not just looking at static engravings today. We are walking the infected streets. We are stepping into the shadow of the Great Plague. This is London Bridge, the only stone tether connecting the city to the south. Usually, this is a place of deafening clamor, traders shouting, livestock bleating, the roar of the river rushing through the narrow arches below. But look closer at the movement our Reconstruction reveals. The flow of traffic is shifted. It is no longer trade coming in, it is people pouring out. The wealthy, the courtiers, the doctors, anyone with the means to flee is packing their lives onto carts and forcing their way across this narrow artery. Imagine standing here amidst the panic. You would smell the tar used to seal the hulls of ships, mixed with the acrid scent of fear sweat and unwashed bodies pushing against you. You would hear the desperate bartering for safe passage to the countryside. Then versus now. Today, London Bridge is a sleek concrete conduit for commuters and tourists, a place of transient efficiency. But back then, it was a medieval bottleneck, a gauntlet of timber houses hanging perilously over the water. It was the last hurdle between the infected city and the clean air of the country, a hurdle many never cleared. We move now to the west, to the parish of St. Giles in the Fields, specifically Drury Lane. This image shows the humbler quarters, where the timber frames sag under the weight of centuries. It was here, history tells us, that the first victims fell. Notice the mud in the streets. In 1665, there is no pavement here. The ground is a churned mixture of earth, refuse, and slop. The air here feels stagnant, trapped between the overhanging jetties of the houses that nearly touch in the middle of the street. If you were here in 1665, the atmosphere would be heavy with suspicion. Neighbors who once shared ale now watch each other from behind shuttered windows. The restless energy of the poor, usually focused on survival, is now focused on the terrifying count of the dead. Then versus now. Walk down Drury Lane today, and you are in the heart of London's theaterland, surrounded by bright lights and the buzz of entertainment. The tragedy of 1665 is buried beneath feet of tarmac and centuries of redevelopment. The silence of the grave has been replaced by the applause of the crowd. We pause now in a generic alleyway, similar to thousands that crisscross the city. This is the site that froze the blood of every Londoner. A rough red cross painted slapdash on the door, accompanied by the words, "Lord have mercy upon us." See the figure sitting on the stool nearby in our Reconstruction. That is the watchman. His job is not to protect the people inside, but to keep them in. Once the plague was identified in a household, the doors were bolted from the outside. The sick and the healthy were locked in together, condemned to wait for the end. Imagine the sounds emanating from behind that thick oak, the weeping of a mother, the delirium of a fevered child, or perhaps the most terrifying sound of all, total silence. The air here smells of burning rosemary and brimstone, desperate attempts to purify the miasma they believed carried the disease. This is Cheapside, For centuries, this was the market of the world. It was the place of ambition, where goldsmiths and mercers displayed their wares. It should be a riot of color and noise. But in our AI reconstruction, we have stripped away the crowds to reflect the reality of mid-July 1665. The shops are shuttered, the iconic market stalls are gone. Grass has reportedly begun to grow between the cobblestones, a detail that emphasizes just how completely the city's heart has stopped beating. Walking these streets, you would feel an eerie sense of trespass. To walk boldly down the center of Cheapside was once impossible. Now, you could fire a cannon down the street and hit no one. The only commerce left is the grim trade of the searchers of the dead. Old women paid pennies to examine corpses and determine the cause of death. Then versus now. Today, Cheapside is a canyon of glass and steel, the engine room of the city's finance. Bankers rush where mourners once stumbled. The ambition remains, but the fragility of life that defined the 17th century has been masked by modern medicine and architecture. Looming over the city is Old St. Paul's. This is not the clean, domed masterpiece of Christopher Wren we know today. This is a dying giant. Even before the fire of 1666, the cathedral was in disrepair, its spire lost to lightning years prior. In 1665, the portico, intended to be a grand entrance, had been overrun by shops and loiterers. But now, even the loiterers are gone. The great stone walls echo with the coughing of the sick who have nowhere else to go. If you stood here, looking up at that crumbling Gothic facade, you would feel the weight of a god who seemed to have abandoned his people. The bells toll incessantly, a relentless rhythm counting the hours and the lives lost. It is a sound that drives men to madness. Then versus now. The Great Fire would sweep this structure away just a year later. The St. Paul's that stands today is a symbol of resurrection and reason, but this version, the old St. Paul's, remains a symbol of the medieval world that was about to be purged by flame. We return to the water, but this time we are on it. The Thames is the lifeblood of London. Usually, it is a highway of wherries and barges. Now it is a place of ghostly stillness. Ships float at anchor, their crews forbidden from coming ashore, trapping them in a floating purgatory. The river itself carries the refuse of the sick city out to sea. Imagine the smell here. The low tide exposes the mudbanks, a foul, sulfuric stench of sewage and rot. Yet for many, the river was the only hope. To get on a boat was to escape the suffocating air of the streets. But as the plague raged, even the boatmen refused passengers, fearing the coin they offered carried the infection. London in 1665 was a city broken by biology. It was a place where the shifting tides of fate could turn a wealthy merchant into a corpse in a communal pit within days. It was fragile. It was terrified. Yet, as we look down on this digital reconstruction, we must remember that this city survived. It endured the silence. It endured the loss of nearly a quarter of its population. And when the Great Fire came just 1 year later to burn this timber labyrinth to the ground, the spirit of the city remained. The mud and the timber would eventually be replaced by stone and brick. The narrow alleys would be widened, but the ambition, that restless, driving force of London, could not be killed by the plague. That's all for now. Please comment what city or era you'd like to see reconstructed next. Thanks for watching.